The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is, in my opinion, the best game Nintendo has ever made. Well, it's not my favorite due to other reasons I have for other games they've made, but I can recognize how much it's changed the gaming industry, with many games being announced nowadays taking heavy inspiration from it, like Sonic Frontiers and Pokemon Legends Arceus. Breath of the Wild is an absolutely huge game, and after playing through it probably 3 or 4 times now, I still find areas that I never even knew existed. And I'm off. That was a little. Maybe I should have turned. Am I dead? Okay. Oh, there goes my bike. Um. Oh, hey man, what are you doing down in this awesome huge hole? Holy moly, a highland in here. Golf? They got golf in this game? This kind of exploration is what makes Breath of the Wild so exciting and fun, and what inspired me to make this video. But without further ado, let's get into 10 things we need in Breath of the Wild 2. I think this one is inevitable, but I want to see the return of the champion descendants. I think they're a great addition in the last game, and although I believe their return is inevitable, I also want to see more building on their characters and have them contribute more to the story, other than being side characters that help you beat the Divine Beast. I really hope they make more appearances and are a lot more vital to the story, especially Sidon. Just look at this man! One of my favorite parts of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was the cutscenes. I loved learning more and more about the past of Hyrule and what things looked like leading up to Ganon's return. I also loved the memory system in Breath of the Wild, and how you got images of locations all around Hyrule and had to explore to find them. I love how they tested your ability to find locations based on their geographical landscape. In the sequel, I think a return of this system in a new way would be awesome. I mean, I have no idea how they would make it come back, but I'm very excited to see how they would do it if they decide to. And maybe have Zelda find memories instead of Link finding them? That also leads me into my next thing that I would like to see in Breath of the Wild 2. Come on, man. This has to be a thing. It has to be. Zelda being playable would be awesome, and I think is something they're waiting to show in a full reveal trailer that would have a release date and everything. I mean, in the E3 2021 trailer, we do see Zelda like fall down this huge hole, and maybe there's points in the story where we switch between Zelda and Link and try to escape and eventually find Link. I think Zelda could have a cool combat style as well that involved using runes in a new way, and maybe she'll be able to use an altered version of Magnesis that can move bombs around. Maybe she can have like 10 bombs out, and you can have a huge explosion and then go in there and finish the rest of them off. I mean, there's so much potential. I think that this is just something that's, it has to be in the game. If it's not, I'm probably going to be disappointed. But I mean, like, come on, man. It has to be a thing. There's so much potential. I'm actually surprised that this wasn't in the original game, especially when we had the ability to upgrade our armor sets with the fairy fountains, but I think a blacksmith system that would allow players to repair weapons and upgrade them would be awesome. In the original game, a lot of people hated having their weapons break. I for one actually enjoyed this, but I will admit it was frustrating at some points when a really good weapon I had been using was about to break. Even though this forces the player to use the physics in the game to creatively deal with enemies, I think at least an upgrade system for weapons would be nice. It wouldn't be something you could do all the time, and it has to be done, say, by a certain NPC that would be in a bunch of towns and even at stables. I think this still allows for players in that moment to have to use creative combat when they have to, but I think it's still having them the ability to even upgrade or even repair their armor would be great. Crafting is a mechanic that would be perfect for the sequel, and I really hope they add it. Because in Breath of the Wild, you have all these materials at your disposal that would be perfect for crafting things like swords, bows, shields, and especially arrows. But instead you are limited to either cooking them to make meals or selling them to get rupees. And I mean, it would be so nice to not have to travel between like 50 towns to get my stock of arrows back up. Especially when you collect items like flint and tree branches all the time, which would be perfect for crafting arrows. I guess I could understand how that might devalue arrows, but also incentivizes the player to explore more and collect more materials, so it kinda evens out. And I mean, like, let's say you got 2 diamonds in a tree branch. No, okay, I'll stop. Now, in my opinion, there is absolutely no way they're bringing back shrines again. Well, at least in the same way. I believe there's going to be like some alternative that serves about the same purpose, but is presented in a different way. Like maybe it has to do something with the whole sky area that I completely forgot about until now. But I would assume it would have something to do with finding something similar to shrines in that area. I honestly really like shrines in the game, and I think the puzzles in them were fun. But I think something different would be really fresh for the game and help it be different from the original. I mean, again, I have no idea what this would be. They might just bring back shrines, but I would prefer an alternative at least. I need more things like this. I mean, look at that thing. Think of all the possibilities and combinations that come with that. Like, imagine you're about to fight a sleeping Hinox, and that shit gets up, and it's like, oh damn, there's an dire Bokoblin camp on that thing. I know it's unrealistic, but I also want to see new enemies from other Zelda games that we never saw in Breath of the Wild. I honestly hope we see some of the scarier enemies from the Zelda series, or even brand new ones we've never seen before lurking in the underground areas of Hyrule. I'm really curious to see what they come up with, and hopefully we will see an enemy that might even trump the Lionel in terms of difficulty, because that thing was harder than the final boss. I love the variety of weapons in Breath of the Wild, especially how they included super overpowered weapons like the mop and soup ladle. But in the sequel, I want to see this expanded upon. Like, I've always thought of the idea of combining two of the elemental weapons together to create a fire and ice sword, or an ice and electricity sword. And then there comes the possibility of brand new weapons, which we've already kind of been introduced to with the trailer showing Link shooting fire from a dragon head on his arm, but also the idea of new swords, spears, bows, and maybe even a crossbow. I'm a firm believer that this sequel will heavily expand Link's arsenal of weapons and create combat possibilities we've never even thought possible, and it's kind of one of the main reasons I'm excited for this game. I've always adored the combat of Breath of the Wild and how dynamic it was. I'm very hopeful for this combat to be heavily expanded upon in the sequel, and this also brings me to the next thing I really want to see in the sequel. Now, we already saw in the trailer what seemed to be like an altered version of Stasis, which looked like it was reversing time instead of stopping it, which was cool. But what if we got a couple of brand new runes? Like, I don't even know if they would be considered runes anymore, because it doesn't seem like Link will have the Sheikah Slate in the sequel. It seems more like the arm gauntlet thingy will hold Link's new powers, which looked like it even helped him face through the bottom of a floating island. But in terms of brand new powers, I think something like an air rune or power thing would be super cool. It would serve as something similar to the Korok Leaf, where it shoots a huge gust of wind at enemies, which would allow for more wind-based puzzles and create new ways to fight enemies and tackle problems. From the trailer, it seems like this game will rely a lot on the exploration of new areas, like the area above Hyrule, but also the area below it. And I think the idea of underground areas like caverns and ravines excites me a lot more than the idea of exploring the area above Hyrule. I think it would be cool to find a hole in the ground that you think might lead to a small little cave, but eventually it expands into an entire cavern filled with new enemies and areas to explore. Like maybe, and I know this is absolutely, preposterously, absurdly, irresponsibly, senselessly deranged, idiotic insanity, but hear me out. Just hear me out. Mole people. Just imagine, okay? Imagine you find little mole villages underground, and the mole people are nice, and they help you explore the underground. Come on, it's not that crazy of an idea. All jokes aside, even though the mole thing isn't a joke I want it, I think an underground area would be awesome to explore. I really loved exploring the insides of Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild and finding different cool areas, and I think that would be cool to find little abandoned mines underground filled with enemies and loot to collect, and probably ores to mine. The idea of this also really excites me, because then that brings up the idea of what the undergrounds of certain areas would look like. Obviously the underground of Hyrule Field would probably just be basic caves, but maybe in colder areas you would find ice caves, or in Gerudo Desert you would find sandy caves where you had to avoid falling sand or objects. I mean, I could go on for a long time gushing about caves, but I feel like I've already said enough, especially with the whole mole people thing. Now I know it says 10 things we need in Breath of the Wild 2, but you know what? I'm gonna hit you with the bonus! With the bonus! 11 things! Okay. Harder final boss. One of my, if not the biggest issue I had with Breath of the Wild, was how easy the final boss was. Like, I mean, even Lionels are harder than the final boss. Even in Master Mode I had no problem defeating Ganon. My biggest hope for the sequel is a much harder final boss that tests the player much more than it did in the original game. I'm hoping I'll actually have to prepare and be ready for this fight, because I remember how fun preparing for what I thought would be a tough battle that I ended up beating in 5 minutes was. I mean, I understand why it was easy, but even in Master Mode I really hoped they would find a way to make the boss harder, but they didn't. I really hope in the sequel, even if it would be a Master Mode exclusive, that they find a way to make the boss really challenging and test all of the players' combat abilities. I was especially disappointed with the Dark Beast's fight difficulty because it almost feels impossible to lose in that battle, even though the stakes are so high, with Dark Beast spewing out giant lasers and destroying the land around it. We don't really know how the final boss will be handled in the sequel, but I at least hope they decide to make it a little bit more difficult. Again, even if it's a Master Mode exclusive. In conclusion, I'm very excited for this game. There's a lot of things that I'm excited for and hope for in this game, but I decided that these were probably the ones I'm most excited for. I don't really make videos like this all the time, but if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you would enjoy my other videos, and hey, if this does well and people like it, in the future I might do one of these for other games I'm hyped for, like Sonic Frontiers or Mario Odyssey 2. And if you want, you can subscribe. Wow, that's kind of shameless. I don't like saying things like that, but yeah, thanks for watching, and don't forget, mole people, they'll be in the game. Mark my words.